They didn't see the nights he couldn't sleep because his thoughts were louder than the silence around him. They didn't see the mornings where he woke up tired from the war he fought in his own mind all night long. They didn't notice the way his hands shook sometimes when no one was watching, or how he clenched his fists just to stop himself from falling apart. They never asked why he stopped talking, or why he laughed a little too late at jokes that never felt funny to him, because no one really cared to look beyond the smile he forced every day. A smile that wasn't joy but armor, a mask forged in the fire of everything he'd endured alone. He didn't have anyone to call at 2 a.m. when everything inside him was breaking. He didn't have that soft voice saying, "You're not alone," or that safe place to fall when the weight became too heavy. So he carried it all in silence, because no one came when he cried the first time, or the second time, or the 100th. So he stopped crying and turned his pain into quiet, and his wounds into walls. He learned not to expect comfort, because expectation only led to disappointment. He learned how to breathe through the ache, how to hide pain behind small talk, how to walk into rooms and pretend he hadn't just been at war with himself. 5 minutes earlier, he was the type of man who was always there for others, always picked up the pieces of everyone else's broken days, always the one who'd listen even when no one listened to him, always the one who'd give even when he was empty and still. Somehow they called him strong, not knowing that strong doesn't mean invincible, not knowing that sometimes strength is just enduring when your soul is begging you to stop. Sometimes strength is getting out of bed when all you want is for the world to disappear. Sometimes it's smiling when you're shattered and no one can tell. He didn't post about his struggles. He didn't make his pain public. There were no long captions, no cries for validation. He didn't want likes or sympathy, he just wanted peace, but peace never came. It had to be built slowly, painfully, from broken pieces of himself, from every memory that still stung, from every betrayal that rewired his trust. He walked through fire alone, and no one even saw the smoke. They just saw the way he stood tall afterward, as if he hadn't been burned, as if he hadn't been bleeding beneath his sleeves. He learned to become his own shelter. He learned that not everyone who says they love you will stay. He learned that family isn't always blood, and friends aren't always forever. He learned that sometimes your own rescue team, your own emergency contact, your own home. He learned to wipe his own tears, because waiting for someone else to do it only led to salt in the wound. He taught himself how to feel deeply without drowning, how to be vulnerable without breaking, how to cry without anyone hearing. There were days when it felt like the walls were closing in, when breathing felt like a chore and hope felt like a foreign language. But he kept going, not because he had a plan, not because he had some vision of a perfect life, but because something in him refused to give up. Something quiet but fierce, something broken but unbending. Maybe it was the memory of who he used to be. Maybe it was the dream of who he could become. Or maybe it was just survival, the raw instinct to move forward no matter how slow, no matter how painful. They didn't see the moments when he sat in the car for an hour after parking because he didn't have the energy to walk inside. They didn't hear the screams in his head while he smiled in conversations. They didn't feel the tension in his chest, the heaviness in his bones, the way his past echoed in everything he did. But he carried all of it with grace. He carried it through work, through loneliness, through rejection, through birthdays no one remembered, through milestones no one celebrated, and still he gave his best to everyone else. He became the man people relied on because he never let them see his weakness. He became the rock because he had no choice. He became the calm in their storm, even when he was drowning in his own. He showed up to the world with a smile, not because he was healed, but because he had mastered the art of holding pain. Like it was nothing he became so good at, pretending that even he forgot what it felt like to be okay. He didn't chase love, he didn't chase attention, he chased silence, peace, healing. But it's hard to heal when the world keeps pulling at your scars. He remembered everyone who left when He needed them the most, and he remembered it silently. He forgave, but he never forgot, because forgetting would mean that the pain never mattered, and it did. It shaped him. It sharpened him. It stripped away every illusion he ever had about people, about love, about promises. Now he walks differently, not bitter, not cold, but aware. He no longer believes every word he hears, no longer attaches to people too quickly, no longer hands out pieces of himself to those who only want to use him. He knows what it costs to trust the wrong ones, and he's paid that price too many times. Still he chooses kindness, not because the world was kind to him, but because he refuses to become what hurt him. Still he gives, still he listens, still he hopes, because despite everything he's been through, he hasn't let the world take his heart from him. He's careful with it now, but it still beats with compassion, still loves quietly, still believes in something better, even if he doesn't say it out loud. Even if his eyes carry more weight than his words, he is not loud about his pain, not dramatic about his journey, but if you look closely, you'll see the war in his silence, the strength in his solitude, the nobility in his loneliness. You'll see a man who never gave up, even when he had every reason to. You'll see a man who smiles not because life was easy, but because he survived what should have broken him, and somehow he still shows up with love in his chest and calm in his presence and courage in his footsteps. And maybe no one will ever truly understand what he's been through. Maybe no one will ever appreciate the nights he held himself together, or the days he walked through with a heart full of cracks, but that's okay. He's not looking for applause, he's not seeking pity, he just wants peace, a place where he doesn't have to pretend, a life where being himself is enough, a future where he can finally exhale and know that the worst is behind him, and that even though no one stood beside him, he never needed them to, because he became everything he needed on his own. So when you see him smile, know that it's not just happiness, it's survival, it's victory, it's every scar learning to glow, it's every heartbreak turned into fuel. It's every night he didn't think he'd make it through, but did, and now he walks not to prove anything to anyone, but to honor the quiet fighter he became. In the dark, he's not the same as he was before, and thank God for that, because now he's stronger, now he's wiser, now he's free. And while the world may never give him the credit he deserves, while the ones he helped may never return the favor, while he may never get a standing ovation for surviving his darkest days, he doesn't need it, because he knows the truth, and the truth is, he fought alone, he broke alone, he healed alone, and still he smiles, not because life was kind, but because he chose not to let it steal the light from his soul. He chose to carry the fire even when it burned. He chose to rise even when no one was watching him. Maybe, just maybe, one day someone will look at him and not just see a man who smiles, but see the story behind it, the battle behind it, the strength behind it. And maybe they'll learn that the quietest people often fight the loudest wars, and maybe they'll realize that sometimes the most beautiful strength isn't in the noise, but in the silence, in the man who walked through hell and still held the door open for others, in the man who fought his battles alone and still showed up with a smile.